recording now. Um, but yeah, this idea like the something that you learn when you study art is creative process and problem solving. And one of the things that we were always trying to do in art school is to figure out how to make unique work. And that's not easy to do. Like if, someone were to say like, here, make a drawing and come up with an original idea. Like how, you need to fail a lot in order to figure out how to do something. And that was always like I remember even in graduate school, we would like, my friends and I would talk about like still trying to figure out how to get to our own work with all the influences you see with other people, with history. Um, a lot of stuff has been done, and it can look like everything has been done already. And so then, like, what are the rest of us supposed to do? But it's not. It doesn't really work that way. Um, there are always new things, and every time new people come along, you get a new combination of like influences and then a unique approach to making new things. So I think the I don't know if I've used this example before. If I have, I'll be quick with it. Um, a few years ago, I came across a it was a news article about a young woman who is her goal is to be an astronaut, and she's planned on this since she was like about I think 11. She told her mother, "I'm going to be an astronaut," and so her mother's like, "Okay, you can be an astronaut if you can do all these things." So she made sure that her daughter had these like opportunities to like learn the things that would get her to where she wanted to go, and it was hard work, and but this woman is now in graduate school. Um, she's still doing these things like to get herself ready, but um, she's studying for college, her undergraduate school, rather than go to MIT, which is an expected like technical school where you would learn all kinds of like cool engineering and that kind of thing. She went to Wellesley, which is a liberal arts, like Wellesley College in Massachusetts. So it's a liberal arts school, old liberal arts school, because she wanted to study math and science, and you can study good math and science there, but she also wanted to study dance and music. And the reason she gives is like the reason for studying dance and music is she wanted to learn creative problem solving, because she knew that like if you're like learning how to dance, you have to like try and fail. It's like with just about really just about with anything, but it's something that comes like solutions come from yourself. And so she said, I knew I would learn a lot at MIT, but I wanted to learn something that I wouldn't have learned there because we're going to, as an astronaut, she wants to go to Mars. She wants to be on the first mission to Mars. That's been her goal. And she said, we're halfway to Mars and we run into a problem that no human has ever experienced before. I want to be able to have good problem solving skills because we're going to have to figure stuff out, like in space. So I thought it was a really good argument that if you go back to like the Renaissance era, math and science, like science and art were just part of the same thing. It was all still creative work. It seems it's more in the last 150, 200 years in the United States where this division between practical and impractical has happened. And it's really an artificial division. So I think that's something that made me think about because Aaron Shakur is an artist. and she can solve technical problems. She can solve technical problems. She has other people execute the technical stuff, but she is the mind behind all of it, and that is very, very important. And that somebody else trying to do that, it wouldn't look the same or be the same, and that's harder to do. So because I had a student who was a career changer years ago at Harrington, who was an electrical engineer, and he was in a three-dimensional design class for designing um, like relief pattern designs from scratch. And the start of it was to take paper, cut it, fold it, tear it, and just kind of like pin it to a board and bend it away and see like what kinds of things happen. Because light and shadow were supposed to be integrated with it. And he struggled because he could, he knew how to like create a pattern using trigonometry. It would be very simple. And the other students were just trying things. And like they'd try something like, now that's stupid. Like, but wait, what if you try this? And he'd say, my mind doesn't work that way. I know like how to like make something, but it's got to be very organized. And I think the creative process isn't. So anyway, that's enough about that. I'm glad some of you were able to go to participate in that. I did not ask her if I could record it because I didn't want to ask her that because I felt like she was already doing enough for us just to offer her time. I will be sending her a thank you on behalf of everybody. So yeah, so it was. I had asked Aaron to talk about some of the things like money and like contractors, just like kind of like the business of it, like even just like stuff that you really can't do in school. So because you can't really have a project like a design studio class where you have to have a difficult conversation with a contractor that started changing things because it was easier for him, which is something where at some point you're going to have someone you'll have to do it or you'll be with like your boss and it'll have to happen where it's like no, this is wrong, you guys have to do this again. You completely ignored the plans. So, and that's not all of them. There are some really good contractors and vendors that that's something that people always tell me. I hear from this. I hear this from a lot of interior designers, that when you find your contractors, you do everything you can to keep them, because like that's the person you want doing, like painting, or this is the person you want doing the flooring, because they're good, they're responsible, and it'll get done the way you want it done, and that you won't have to fight them for it. Okay. Next semester, I'll do some more of this. I'll find some more. There's a couple of people I have in mind to ask. And if you, at some point, think like something I'd like to, like something you want to know that we might get out of a guest speaker, send me an email and tell me. So, we used to have like the Interior Design Club, we used to have regular meet, like we would have like once a month we would have either a guest speaker come to campus, or we would go to the NKBA monthly meeting, or go to a showroom, but or a firm, but that kind of got impossible by coronavirus, and like right now still it seems like it keeps going up and down, and can't really go out. I don't want to take a bunch of, have everyone go into a crowd. Okay, Now, um, history. Next week, next week on Monday, I'm going to have your final exam ready for you to take. My plan is I need to do some work on it, um, and it might take me it might take me part of the day on Monday. I'll have it open and ready for you to take no later than 5 p.m. on Monday. Our exam, the final exam time is a week from tonight, but I want to have it open earlier. I want you to have more time to take it.
Is there like a study guide that we can look at or know what?
Not really. It's I would ask you to review books, notes, presentations.
Just everything?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. Partly, I have the you have I will you have the ability to have your book open, notes open, internet open while you're taking it. So
Okay.
yeah,
So it will be cumulative, but mostly focused on the 20th century. Is that correct? Correct.
yes. There will be some stuff from earlier, uh, but the emphasis will be on 20th century.
I also have a question about vocabulary
Oh yeah,
cards. So we don't have as many items from later on. Can we just pull something that's not on the list if it fits into it's not on the list on the vocabulary? There are
yes,
lists. So just like say that type of chair or whatever it is, and
yes.
say what it is and
Yeah,
draw it.
you could use the Abrams guide,
Okay.
um, and if you want to or if there's something from one of the presentations, I'm going to talk to you about show you a few websites of some contemporary furniture designers at the end tonight. Um, so like Philippe Stark is one, and you could use some of his furniture. So yeah, so as long as it fits, as long as it's, as long as it is something that is an example that fits within I guess that would fit the description of historical or contemporary, um, then you can use it.
I have another question. You reopened the ones from the previous vocab cards, and I had screwed up the photos that I posted, so I posted new ones. I hope that's okay.
I did see that. Yes, that's okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes, I have um, the most recent quiz, the 19th century, that I reopened. For a few of you still have to take it. The discussion board, vocabulary cards, just so that um, if you still have it to do, then you may do it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. I don't want to stop anybody from turning in work. Um, so but if I don't set a deadline, then nothing, then too much will come in at the very end, and then I can't even deal with it. So, yeah, so it's final exam, final set of vocabulary cards, um, and then any work you may not have done yet, if that's the case for you. Hmm. And next week, I will leave the final exam open next week throughout the week. I will have to close it at some point, late Friday night, maybe late Saturday night. I have to have grades submitted by Tuesday at noon, week after next. And if I leave the exam open for too long, then I might get a bit of a crunch time to getting things done. That usually doesn't happen because a lot of you are going to be ready like on Monday evening, like let's go. I'm going to get this thing done, and that's great. So, but I usually leave it for people who like if you're going to be like busy working all week next week, and you're like, oh my God, I don't have time for this, then I will allow time on the weekend too. So that it's not like you've got to do it when you're just like really tired from work. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, I think that should be good. So we will not have a meeting, like a scheduled meeting next week. I can make myself available this time next week. And just like sign in, and like if you're like have a question, I'll just sign at 6 o'clock next week. I'll sign in to WebEx, and if you just like oh my God, I have to ask him a question, then you can do it. So, but if you don't, I mean, I'll be at my desk. I'll be doing something. I'll be petting Elliot because he'll want to be lying on the keyboard, and he'll be disappointed that he'll probably be disappointed that it doesn't matter because I'm not really, like I might not be typing at all. He likes it better when he's stopping me from doing something. But the life of the kitty. It's the way of the cat. All right. So last week we talked about not postmodern, mid-century modern, and this presentation I have for you will has like reviews some of that, and then we go into pop culture, like pop art design, and so like 60s, 70s, and then postmodern, and then into some, we'll get into some more like recent stuff. Okay. Here we go. I'm sharing my screen. Come on. Everything's been so sluggish. Okay. Okay, so modern really, I mean, technically from this like standpoint of historians, modern actually starts with the Renaissance. That is like I remember learning this in college when I was getting my history degree, that around the year 1500 is considered to be the beginning of the modern era. So you have like big chunks like modern, Middle Ages, ancient, and this is sort of like the whole like Euro-American tradition. But modern, like it's like what we often think of as modern is like 20th century, maybe going back into the 19th century. But modern, and then modernism, which is more like considered like not just like a general era, but something that's more stylistic, that gets started in the late 19th century, but it's really like seems to be like the first part of the 20th century is when you get like modernism with a capital M. And that's like the international style. That's the Bauhaus, Mies van der Rohe, the Danish, like they're like the Scandinavian designers, like this guy Alvar Aalto. I don't know that the Finns are technically Scandinavian. They are on the peninsula, but they're a little different in terms of their language is not the same at all. But you know, so you have like the Scandinavian modern, American modernist, like the sort of like commercial modernism with Knoll and Herman Miller, that is like part of the like this sort of like post World War II industrial boom that happens. And then after a while, like when you get into like the 60s, there are a lot of social movements, civil rights, women's rights, really everybody's rights. If you're not if you're not like part of the group that has always had rights, and that's white men. That's that started to like started to erode um, the orthodoxy of modernism. So the international style, Mies van der Rohe, that was kind of like it sort of became dominant and then oppressive, where you had to do things like there was a lot of there were a lot of things in modernism that you're not allowed to do, which is like any reference back to traditional architecture, such as like the neoclassicism, Greek, Roman, Gothic, anything that seems like those old revival styles is not permitted. And then in the 60s, architecture and design students start to get tired of that, because it starts to get to where modernism is no fun. So we'll see some of the pop stuff that comes out of that. So here, Alvar Aalto, this is a Finnish designer. We looked at some of his furniture last week. This is a beautiful glass vase. So in terms of this being something that's innovative, normally like a vase is like a sort of like a tapered cylinder, but this is really more organic and unique. This exhibition. So this is this is this exhibition at the Museum of Fine Arts in Richmond, Virginia, bringing Scandinavian design to the U.S. so people could see what it is. At first, it really didn't take off. It wasn't like the American stuff. This was took some time for people to kind of fall for Scandinavian design. Bent plywood. So this molded and bent birch plywood. And if I did mention IKEA last week, IKEA comes out of the same idea of this sort of functional Scandinavian modernism. They're a Swedish company. And this is related to the Austrian furniture designer Tone, who really introduced the idea of like cutting long strips of wood into veneers and then steaming them and bending them so that you can just pretty much mold, you can really just like form the wood any way you want to, or in a lot of different ways. So this same technology, so the same idea was picked up and used by people like Aalto. There's some experiments with his how to what the individual pieces should look like. How do you bend it? So it's very interesting. If you like those layers become very strong when you laminate those layers together. That's why they can support weight as furniture. So here's this birch stool. I remember like seeing this stool around when I was a kid in schools, and it was probably a knockoff. I'm sure it wasn't the original thing with the Catholic schools. But this is a very nice, efficient, modern design. There they are stacked up. Makes a nice three-dimensional pattern. Eero Saarinen. So Eero Saarinen was original. His father, Eliel Saarinen, was born in Finland and came to the U.S. and settled in Michigan near Detroit. And Eero is his son. And Eero Saarinen designed the St. Louis Arch. He designed a lot of furniture for Knoll. He knew Florence Knoll. Did a lot. So he introduced this pedestal table for Knoll using the new materials like fiberglass and plastic. The TWA terminal in New York. It's really a cool. It's just like cool. It's like modern sculptural architectural space. And there's a certain amount of futurism to this. Really the amount of progress in the 20th century was just kind of like hard to keep up with. So they went just in a few short decades. They went from you have carriages, horse-drawn carriages, then you have cars, then you have planes, then you have jet aircraft by the end of World War II, which is like 1944, 1945. That's quick. And now we have other things, like innovations that we can't even keep up with. So here are some sketches for the tulip chair. I like these drawings. These are quite beautiful sketches. And there is a seating, like the pedestal table with the tulip chair, the armchair version, and the side chair version. So this very, very modern. Here, this is from a house in Columbus, Indiana, the Miller House, a conversation pit. I always thought these things were from like the 60s and 70s, but people like Saarinen were at it early. Columbus, Indiana has a lot of interesting architecture. I had not known this. There's a film. I haven't seen the film, but it's a film. So it takes place where this guy's trying I guess John Cho plays the main character, where it's like his father is an architect or an architecture. I think his father's an architect. It's set in Columbus, and Columbus is just like this surprising number of just really interesting architectural. A lot of really interesting architecture that seems surprising, but there was like a local business that supported. So this built-in, it's this sort of like sunken seating area. This is like it's permanent. Like if this is your house, this is your, like that's there. You're not going to just say like, oh, just rearrange it. I guess you could fill it in with like make a fountain or a pond out of it, but that would be weird. Arne Jacobsen. This is these chairs. We looked at we saw these last week too. The egg, swan, and the tongue or drop chairs. And here, leaping ahead, this is the skyscraper in London that is affectionately known as the Gherkin, or a pickle. And the reason we're looking at this, not just because Norman Foster's a pretty darn good architect, but they use, this is furniture by Le Corbusier, the French modernist. Actually, he's Swiss, but he worked in France. This has this this steel frame on the outside and the cushions kind of smushed in there. So this furniture was designed a lot earlier than the building was built. Like the original designs of this chair go back to, I think the 20s, maybe I think the 30s, and this building was finished in 2004. Here is the bar on the top floor with some Jakobsen chairs. So there's some of this modernism. It holds up really well in terms of style. It's very flexible in its style. If you put like the Tone chairs would also usually work well, but if you put something like those Victorian era furniture makers, the Herder brothers, which is really like ornate, lots of classical elements, it really would not fit well in this. It would create clear contrast of style, which sometimes can be great, but it would not look. It wouldn't look right in here. Okay, there is the ant chair by Jakobsen. I like that bent wood. Hans Wegner, the chair. Vignule, the chieftain. So I really like the way they, like the upholstery and the wood look very well integrated, not just in terms of color, but also like in terms of the form. Like those arms look like they might be wood, but they're not. It's leather. And these really like gently curving edges, I think, are really quite beautiful. And it's really more like the design and the material are what's beautiful about it, not like carving, not gilding, not marquetry. It's just, it's form. And this is I guess it's sort of like a feature of modernism, is that you allow like the beauty of the design comes in how it is like it comes from the materials, it comes from the sort of like fundamental elements like a curve or a rectangle, which is a really this is kind of like a newer idea. I really love the way the arms just kind of sit over the vertical piece for the leg and the under structure of the arm. Yeah. A little more from Miller House. There's the Saarinen dining table with dining chairs. And the Windsor rocker off to the left is probably like something the client had that they would insist had to be in there. Okay, Levittown, we did look at this. These prefabs. Levitt kitchen. So a lot of this stuff, this is a new idea to have things. I mean, there are new appliances, refrigerators, clothes washers, dishwashers, and these are new things that need to be designed. And as you see here, things can be manufactured off-site, delivered to the site, and assembled right on the foundation. Now, this is not a complicated house. You see the foundation is just a concrete slab, so there's no basement. But the idea was there was a need to just like to build things quickly. There was a need for housing after World War II, and so this sort of industrial process allowed this to happen. Television. Love those old TV sets. And then the Eameses, as a reminder, Charles and Ray Eames furniture. They designed furniture for Herman Miller. There they are with the. You see the. Does anyone recognize that Eames lounge chair in the foreground?
Yes.
It's a classic. And these, a lot of this furniture, the Knoll and Herman Miller still make it. So you can still find it. It's expensive. The womb chair, I like the womb chair, but again, this is like the materials. It's that same. It's that the steel tube for the like frame of the legs and the support for the seat, but the that seat, like the structure that holds the seat and back cushion, that is made of molded plastic or molded fiberglass. So it's very flexible if you can just take this viscous material that is just like plastic and just pour it into a mold and have it just be have it be strong and have it be like the form that you need it to be. It allows for mass production. Harry Bertoia, this is also for Knoll. Something like that seat, the seat, like the chair that's right in the middle, that seat looks really deep. It really looks like you just might not be able to get out of that. Coconut Chair by George Nelson. I love this chair. That simple, sort of like triangular form. The colors are great. Yeah, that I would. I wouldn't mind having a couple of those myself. And this is also they're starting to have some fun and create. It's like sort of like it's functional furniture, but it's also artistic. So you can see some of modernism wasn't all following rules and doing whatever Mies van der Rohe tells you to do. But it's kind of sort of paves the way a little bit for what comes in the 60s. So this is Osamu Noguchi. That's Noguchi palette table. And here we go. So here's some, let the fun begin. The Italian designers were kind of more known for this experimentation and just kind of silly design. This inflatable chair, this is an exploration in new materials, the PVC plastic, and just inflating it so that it would support someone sitting in it. And I've seen this, same idea used for a floating chair for a swimming pool. And it's just kind of it's it's sort of it's cheap industrially produced furniture and just embracing the fact that yes, this is made out of plastic, and that's its one of its appealing features. So, has anybody ever had a beanbag chair?
I have one.
How do you feel about it?
I love the beanbag chair.
What is it? What do you love about the beanbag chair?
Well, so I'd leave it in front of the window and I would sit in the beanbag chair and I would read and I would just lay all over it and then my dogs would lay on it with me and it's it's a beanbag chair.
Yeah, it's beanbag chair. It's a blob,
Yeah.
but it's a functional blob, and it has exactly that. You kind of like, the idea of the beanbag chair was that it would kind of like sort of like take the form of whoever's using it. Um,
Yeah.
and I remember them when I was a kid, and they were kind of fun. But of course, like we would just like jump on them and very quickly like rip the seam, and to the little like foam pellets would be all over the place. So usually there's some like tape on them somewhere, but it's a similar idea to this like the blow chair. It's like I mean it's meant to be fun, in a way. It's also just saying like, well, like serious furniture that's fine, but you can like what constitutes a chair doesn't have to look like a chair, like this one, the Joe sofa. So Joe DiMaggio's baseball mitt was the basis for this Joe sofa. Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe were a couple for a while, and so they also designed like a Marilyn Monroe lips sofa, which you may have seen. Has anyone seen that?
Yes.
Yeah. So then here, and this is like informal, lounging, casual, comfortable. This is like 1971. So the 1960s there was a lot going on in terms of protest against very old ways of doing things that just weren't working. So I think like a lot of like well, civil rights for one thing, very important, um, and a lot of other like the protesting the Vietnam War. Like when you get into the later 60s and early 70s, um, I remember it was really it's just like growing up. It seemed like the world was just chaotic as I sort of became aware of what was going on. So and part of that was like in terms of design, I'd have to say as I mentioned, the rules of modernism were strict, and you had to do things a certain way, especially when you were in school. And as one architect, I think maybe like Robert Venturi uh, made a comment, just like, "What's the matter with an arch? Like, why can't I use an arch? I want to use an arch." And like, "Oh no, that's like Romans, or that's like for engineering." And so at some point, some young architects and designers decided, "I'm doing it anyway." I'm sick of being told like you're all these things you can't do, and this is kind of what happens. I did the same kind of thing. If someone told me I couldn't do something, I would do it and find out why. And sometimes I would find out you can do it. Sometimes I would find out you can't. They're correct. You really can't paint that way because it won't work. In some cases, I decided like I didn't want to. I wanted to make a painting, an oil painting on paper, and I didn't want to take the time to prime the paper. And a friend of mine said, like, you can't just paint oil paint right on paper. Like, get out of here. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. And oil paint will just, like paper, if it doesn't have any barrier of the acrylic gesso, it'll just stain the paper. And this like big oil stain just kind of like grows out of your painting. It's really disgusting. But I had to do it and find out because I didn't really care for people telling me, well, you can't. And I always wanted to know why not. Okay, plastic stacking chairs, sort of like late 60s. So, like, in terms of artwork, like pop art, any of you familiar with Andy Warhol?
Yes.
So pop art, just art that comes from popular culture or that is influenced by popular culture, that makes its way into furniture, of course. People started to experiment with all-in-one units like this total furnishing unit, um, a bathroom, which is really kind of like, it's like, okay, so it's a bathroom on a private jet. Or I think it was really more like, I don't know that this was, I don't think that that's what this was for. This was just like this, designer coming up with this like, interior that is all like really like, so like this is like part of an interior that can be made in a factory. Not that you should. Okay, so this Max Clendenning, the graphics, wall graphics. This is like a '60s thing that so like persisted into the '70s. Um, in some cases, I think is pretty cool. Sometimes it was really kind of dopey, but the kind of like striped, um, this kind of like striped patterning that was applied to walls was just, it was done because it was cool. And it was also like, it's like, why can't you? Like, well, you can. And so some people did. Here's some of this furniture by Max Clendenning. And it's experimental. I don't love it personally. I can appreciate the fact that it's experimental and you can see how it's made. It's just made of flat shapes of wood. The scale of the the poles on those doors is intentionally exaggerated. Things are like big and soft and just kind of simple. That is another. Sorry, I want this picture is for those little like those pastille chairs, um, the green fiberglass chairs. I love those things. I've sat in them. They're not comfortable unless you have some like a pillow or two. The plastic gets really hard, just like your body. It's unforgiving. Like if there's something is going to give, your body will give, not the plastic. And then you find like, ow, I can't get up. So also this like 60s stuff. You see, this is like a like 60s and into the 70s. There's a shag airy carpet. Shag carpet. I remember it well. We didn't have it in our house. We had like this like sculpted carpet. It's kind of like a sort of organic, kind of random design cut into it. But the shag carpeting is like it's cool at first, but be prepared to spend some time cleaning it. A lot of stuff gets in. It gets like in there. I had a friend they had like shag carpeting in their living room, and then also up the stairs. I remember like slipping coming down the stairs because there's like the shag carpeting just like makes it kind of like a waterfall, and it was very easy to just like whoop down you go. But some of the ideas in the '70s, especially with like crazy like some of like the '60s pop stuff getting out of control with excessive use of pattern. Plaid was very popular, unfortunately, because it was misused. I've seen like the plaid same plaid used on carpet, upholstery, wall covering, and over the ceiling, and window treatments, and throw pillows. And like the only thing that's not the same plaid is like the legs of the furniture, and it's disorienting. It's cool, but it's more like it's kind of, in a way it does the same kind of thing as Mies van der Rohe making sculptural interiors that are not for everybody. The idea of like these kind of like cool, this cool idea of like going over the top and then continuing to make it even more weird or like more uniform. It's just hard to it can be hard to take. Okay, so this photograph, this is a photo collage by the architect Stanley Tigerman, who was one of the, I guess you could call him one of the leaders of the postmodern rebellion against modernism. And Stanley Tigerman, he was in Chicago. He died not too long ago. He made this photo collage as a as a critique of the influence of Mies van der Rohe. And so this photo collage, the Titanic, that's Crown Hall from IIT, designed by Mies van der Rohe, going under. That's how he felt. And that is how a lot of the postmodernists felt about modernists. So here, Robert Venturi, these are like simple, almost childlike versions of Sheraton, Chippendale, Biedermeier, Gothic Revival, and Art Nouveau chairs. And you look at them, you can see it. But it's extraordinarily simple. Here, Charles Moore, another, these are all American architects. He taught at University of Texas for a long time. This Piazza d'Italia in New Orleans. Now this is, like with modernism says, you can't use classical references. This is Charles Moore saying, "Watch me." Some of it is really like replica, like those Corinthian capitals up at the top of this collage of buildings, and then these like like they look like they're steel columns that are like Greekish, Romanish, like maybe like a kind of like a Doric column, but definitely not any not like not a replica. They're sitting up on a pedestal, so those would be Roman, probably like Tuscan columns. But also just like some of the crazy shapes in the steps. It's really like this sort of like fun collage of architecture. So the postmodernists are doing everything they can to move past modernism. And sometimes it's this kind of like weird looking, like I'm not sure where, like they went out of their way to make it look different. So this like Memphis is a group of designers that worked with this sort of like this certain style. Neon, I remember, oh man, the neon was really hot in the 80s. It was ridiculous. I don't particularly care for neon, but it doesn't mean you can't use it well. And this like the furnishings are really kind of like, these chairs to me are just kind of hard to figure out. Like, they're kind of bulky and they look like they're just made out of foam. Oh, they're not. There's a lot of foam on the inside. Vittoria Success. Carlton room divider. Just very, so like, kind of like punchy color. Really like just like single saturated, so like painted wood. Creative, sculptural. But I remember seeing stuff like this. I had a like cutting, like making things just like painted wood. Was kind of part of the era. I took a three-dimensional design class my first semester of college, and we made something that looked a little bit like this, just like smaller versions of it. And it seems like everybody's doing this. Michael Graves, a Plaza dress table, or Memphis. So this, they did, I remember this, like the Art Deco was like revived in the 1980s. And this is kind of like a, this sort of like dressing table is, there are like that ziggurat, so it has the deco feature of like the getting smaller as it goes up. Oh, and so this is a bit of a non sequitur. Laura Ashley, this like very traditional. So like at the same time as you had this like crazy stripped down postmodernism, you also had this like Laura Ashley that made like like interior furnishings, dresses, very traditional. This was like another, I guess in a way it's almost like another version of this rejection of modernism. Is we're going back to traditional French decorative styles. And this was I remember like Laura Ashley stuff was hugely popular in the 80s, into the 90s, I'm sure. But definitely traditional. So yeah. So we're going to talk about some more recent stuff with some websites. But here, this Ron Arad is an architect and designer, and I really like this chair. The first version was produced in the 1980s. It's stainless steel. I mean, it's pretty easy to see that it's really more of a piece of sculpture than a functional chair. And you could use it as a functional chair, but you definitely like need some help, like pillows. That would be kind of tough to spend a lot of time in it. But I like it as an object. This is a design, just to give a little context to Ron Arad. This is a design museum in Israel. It's Corten steel. Anyway, that's so from this. I think some of the most like one of the things I would want you to be able to do is to identify like if you like with like postmodern, like what makes something look postmodern? I think some of the pop art stuff you could call postmodern because it starts to move away from the orthodox Bauhaus modernism, or even like the mid-century modernism is already moving away. Is already sort of like um, ditching some of the strictness and the like no fun of Bauhaus modernism, but or I guess the international style. Bauhaus, those guys were pretty fun. Mises the like big uh, rock that no one could move. Okay, so now here I brought up some these like websites. This is in the 20th century. There's a folder in the your presentations section down at the bottom here. 20th century, and I brought up some of these, opened up some of these websites here. This guy, he's a good contemporary designer, a Dutch designer. I think he's based out of London. But he started doing things like these, like cut paper that now he'll have them manufactured like in metal or plastic. I bought a pendant light of his at Target. So some of these designers will do stuff where it's like they have this sort of like high-end, either like just like one-off sculptural pieces, or they make stuff that it costs a decent amount of money to buy, but they also make less expensive versions for like retailers like Target. And like like this, some of these are more like sculpture. They're really more like meant as like hanging sculptures. Like this is just like a cut metal. But then like some of these, like this guy, I like this. That's cool. Hmm?
So are you calling these all postmodern then?
This is so like we're kind of like now. This is 2019. Um,
Mm.
Now we're pretty far past postmodern to where we're in this like what I think eclecticism, or just like this like eclectic era that really, I don't know that it has a um, really clear identity
Okay.
because things keep changing so quickly. Um, some of like the like innovation is like coming in technology,
Mm.
less in the appearance of something. I can think some of the innovation will come in materials. Yeah. So, Tord, I like the guy's work. That's a white one. Yeah. And go back here. Like this is a really, I think, just like a beautiful idea. Um, where this is made, there's a kind of like stamped copper, I think this is. Yeah, copper garland meanders through the space, lightly touching the ceiling in a few places. Copper flowers hold lights and illuminate the room. So this is a like very elaborate chandelier that looks more like it's just something that's growing out of your ceiling. That's cool. Ooh, let's turn it. Let's watch the video. Mhm. Really cool. It's the most interesting thing in that interior. But so like with that, you have like it has elements of being like pop art, sculpture. I think it owes a lot to like more like fine arts than to something like functional modernism. Okay, next, David Ajay, English. I think he was born in Ghana, in Africa, and he's an architect and a very very good one. But I wanted to show you, a lot of architects design furniture because they can, and they might also design like kind of like the way Florence Knoll did it. If she found like this, like she wanted something for something she was designing, and they didn't have it at Knoll, she would design it herself. So these are pretty cool. They look definitely sculptural. Um, Almost like almost animated, like they're in the act of, and in the process of walking. This is nylon. That's cool. Bronze coffee table. This will set you. This would probably be an expensive item. The bronze coffee table, but I do like these. So just in terms of chairs, it's hard to come up with something new and something original. I mean, in a way, similar to like the like the Marcel Breuer, like that, like 1920s modernist chair where they, they sort of use the tube of steel and it's cantilevered, meaning it's the the seat projects out into space. There's no leg right down there behind at the back of the seat. It has to be balanced and strong enough that a person sitting in it will just like the chair is meant to sag a little bit, but it'll support you. So that's a little bit from David Ajay, and this is done with no. So like an architect teams up with a furniture manufacturer and produces this, some of this stuff. Philippe Starck, French designer, done a lot of furniture. He did, see if I can find the Louis Ghost chair. A lot. Some of this will be really this is made of acrylic. He made a version. He made a version like it's called Louis Ghost. It's a Louis the Fifth. It's like it's a Louis the 16th chair in clear acrylic. So this is, and I show you this because this is more like a, um, you know, getting farther and farther away from some of the earlier examples that we looked at in terms of traditional, more traditional furniture. Find this. Oh, this is silly. Look at this. Sometimes they're just having fun. Miss less. So, Philippe Starck is another, of course, he's another designer. Where they got really ghost. Oh, this is really good right here too. Some of the stuff that, like when you see, like some furnishings, they start to look like they've already been designed before. Even like this very simple chair, the broom chair. It's nothing special. There's a lot of furniture because there are a lot of different tastes, and so there's plenty to choose from. I think we're kind of like past. It's almost like we're past. There's kind of something for everybody. If you want your furniture to be fun or funny, lighthearted, not serious, you can find lots of it. You can still find a lot of traditional stuff. If you want Chippendale chairs, you can find Chippendale chairs. People still make them. And definitely Queen Anne, definitely. Now, before we get to, I wanted to talk a little bit about our friend IKEA. So IKEA, based in, it's a Swedish company, and they make a lot of inexpensive, build it yourself, so like put it together yourself furniture. You also have like this, like on their website, the opportunity to design rooms, which is this is like this software. Have any of you used any software like this where you can just like drop stuff into a space? I think it's interesting. This is like, um, it's, it's not, it's almost like it's like a deluxe version of like, you used to be able to buy a, like prefab house from Sears. See, it changes the perspective for you. Isn't that nifty? Put it right there. This is so much fun, isn't it? So you can do lots of this. This is not the same thing as doing interior design. This is like collage, making a collage. It's like a collage that helps you to see what you might get. Now, yeah, your design work will be better than this. And I came across a news article about something that is available in Japan. That if we could do things the way the Japanese do them, that would be great, because I love this shark mascot that is like works for IKEA. this is an IKEA manager in Japan is a shark. But I came across this article about tiny homes. They have I think in square feet, it's like 110 square feet apartment in Tokyo because Tokyo is very densely populated. Um, and you have this like I think as an experiment, you can rent it like those like you can kind of sign up. I think it's a competition. You can sign up to rent it for like $1 a month, but then you got to live in it. And I think the where is the video here? Oh yeah, here's this shark guy. So it's very very small. I think it's very interesting to see what kinds of what kinds of things are happening in housing. Like here's the apartment furnished. You can barely, there it is, empty. You can barely see. It's kind of hard to photograph it because there's just like you can only back up so far. It's a loft where the bed is. There it is with no furnishings. I'm fascinated by this. This is the sleeping loft. It is with nothing in it. It's it's kind of tempting. I don't know. I don't know if I would want to spend more than like one day there. Although I've had some small apartments. Anybody else like under like in your early college days, some like really like just tiny apartment? You make it work. Yeah. So that is so like I was like looking at this. This was like in like the CNN business on their website. That it's kind of like this. Like this is kind of like what's one thing that people are doing with an interior, especially something like a place like Tokyo that is they only have so much space, and they've got to make these like tiny places. And I imagine people, it's you make it work. If you work a lot, you just like you're only home to like to sleep. Then would it matter? It bothers me.
Tiny
Go ahead.
tiny houses are exploding everywhere. There are so many shows and so many different things going on with tiny houses
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, it's I mean it's an interesting idea. Um, and I think in some cases for like some like either just in terms of affordability, like making affordable housing or places where you need space, um, it makes sense to me. But that's also like something that like it's um, available. Like IKEA owns it, and they also like you have this like everything is furnished by IKEA. Um, it's meant to be affordable, and I think affordable housing is something that is a real concern in a lot of parts of the world. Okay.
This looks like a nicer version of those flats in Korea, Seoul, Korea. I forgot how they're called.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen those?
Um,
It's just like a room, no window, the bed, you can't even lay down, fully.
that's
It's for like, I don't know, something cheap, and
yeah.
some people live in it.
That's what Korea is interesting because it's very they're very stratified. Like they're definitely like they're like the people who are like people who have advantages and people who don't. And if any of you have watched any like the Korean shows that have like sort of like um, pushed their way to the front on Netflix, They bring that, like I've watched several, and like it's always there that, um, you know, people there definitely is a lower class of person in Korea, and it's all economic. And there are people that live in just like terrible little places, and they really have very little prospect of getting out of it. So yeah, this is a lot nicer. Yeah. So I like the shirt with the barcode on it because you're if you live there, you're just also a product of like something that like is part of IKEA's landscape. Um, okay, I think that's enough about this. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and ask you if you have any questions.
I have a question. So
Yeah.
you said you wanted us to be able to identify postmodernism. So from what I was gathering from what you said, it was like really a revolt against modernism. So it was going back to using some more classical elements and lots of color.
Yes. I mean, a lot of it is like, like it breaks the rules of modernism.
Hmm.
Um, and the definitely like you start to see like this very intentional use of classical like ornament, um, even like those chairs with the like the sort of like very simple, almost like a kid's version of a Biedermeier chair.
Hmm.
It looks kind of cartoonish, and in a way, it was like like modernism kind of held a innovation down for a little while. And it's interesting how these periods will start out being like cutting edge, and they're bothering everybody because they're so weird and so new. And then the longer they stick around, they become traditional.
Hmm.
And that's definitely like not where like Mies van der Rohe became this like traditional modernist, and it's not where he started. He started out as the guy with all the weirdest ideas. So that's things turn over because of like the younger architects that studied in the 1960s, they weren't born, they didn't have to live through like World War I and what that did to Europe and why that sort of like created the modernist movement as we like this like the Bauhaus modernist movement. Um, and so they kind of like it's like you don't get it. It's like I don't. It's like you don't get your parents because you didn't experience what they experienced, and you can't. They talk about like blah blah blah, like about something like oh yeah whatever, like like it doesn't. I mean, it matters to them because they lived it. You didn't live it, so like how could it matter to you so much? Um, and that's the way it is. And if any of you have children, the same thing. Like your kids are like, oh my god, you guys are so stupid, um, because like you're not developing at the same at this time right now. You've already done it, so it's normal that they would constantly just kind of like just like chucking old ideas for new ones. So that's part of like um, the postmodern using all this like color and neon, um, making these kind of like stupid looking simple versions of traditional furniture. Like they knew what they were doing. They were making fun of it, but they also were making something that they meant to be good. So it's like you don't design something and say like yeah it's terrible. Um, they did like they wanted it to look that way, and I think you know they I'm sort of remarked like sort of had this realization at some point, like the 19 like shag carpeting for example. It's like kind of cool for a little while, but then you get tired of it, and then you realize like people just did this because it was different and weird, and it had its coolness for a while, but then you realize like this is not a very like there are problems with the way it functions, um, and so then it just like it didn't stick around much. You still get some people using it for fun, but it's hard. It's a really like it's a drag to have to clean it, and it's slippery, which I discovered falling on my butt. So, but and also like combinations like um, brown was very popular in the 70s, as I recall, um, and it was this like dark earthy color, and then it would be contrasted with really saturated like yellow, orange, or green. Like brown and green as a combination can be very unpleasant. But if you think about it, like that's in nature, brown and green. Um, but designers would use it in such a way that was meant to be like we're gonna make it look artificial on purpose. Um, and that's something that like it is something that you do because you're not just trying to imitate your sources, you're trying to come up with something that has like something that looks unique. Does that make sense? So like like you can't, and if you try to beat nature at beauty, you'll lose every time. What you do is you do what nature can't or doesn't do. So like you can use these like materials to like emphasize what's good about the material, not try to make it look like it's you know as beautiful as a flower or grass or something like that. When I see this in drawing, I teach drawing like a observational drawing, you know, in the Evanston Art Center, and when I have students, students drawing still life, and we'll bring out like I'll like later in the class I'll like buy like an arrangement of flowers, bring it to the class, set it up, and they're like, oh my god, I can't draw that. Too complicated, too detailed. And I'll show them ways to do it. And I will remind them, you're drawing with like pencil on paper. This flower is made of organic material, and you can't. You're like the drawing can't be that. And so what you should do is something that the flower isn't. Like you're going to try to like create this facsimile on paper, but your drawing will also contain things that the flowers can't be. And you have like this sort of freedom, this sort of like there's room for you to be creative and make it look enough like the flowers that it's going to be convincing, but also has some stylistic um, qualities that don't exist in the flowers. And that's like you see that like if you look at a museum and you look at like paintings, um, something that looks like it's like a realistic painting. If you look closely, you'll see like you can see how kind of like how it's like what it's made of. So anyway, yeah, I think since the last several, I think to me the last several decades have kind of flattened out in a way in terms of the way things look, and the innovation does come more in like like technology seems like it's where it's like changing and um, we're getting like more new things. I mean, I saw like a heated scarf that's just like has like a little like power button on it, and it's like what? Like okay, that's kind of cool, but I wouldn't have thought of that. I wouldn't like. I mean, to me, it's just like well, like it's a scarf. You like wrap it around your neck, warmer, but like that you could have like a heating element in it, and that the heating element would be flexible enough that you could do, treat it the way it's like use it like it's a traditional scarf. Okay, I think that's enough for me. Excuse me. I hope that some of you have learned something in this class. Otherwise, I've not. We have to do this again. Go back to the beginning. Okay.
I learned a lot more than well, I did learn because I know more now than I did, but then I started the class with, so not all is lost.
Yes, that's good. It's always like, it's for me, like it can be like a dangerous question. Like, did you guys learn anything? And everyone's like, no one wants to say anything because like nobody learned anything.
I will say the vocabulary words,
yeah,
were probably like the biggest thing I took away. Is what helped me the most was being able to go back and reference the vocabulary words,
mm-hmm.
and having everybody do a word and post a picture of what those words are, and having us do the note cards, because that is particularly how I learn. I mean, everybody learns in a different way, but that is how I learn. You have me draw it and you have me read it, and that is how it sticks to me. And so that was a great benefit for me, and I thank you for that.
Good. But getting the information in multiple forms really helps you to remember it. And I realized the drawing might be, the drawing's challenging if you don't have a lot of experience drawing. They don't have to be great art, and when you go to draw it, you have to see what it is. Like, you really have to see it in order to draw it. You analyze it in a way that you wouldn't analyze it if you just look at it. So that's
correct.
Intentional.
That, and I love when on the vocabulary words, when there is more than, when people include more than just the definition. Like if they include more, like the history of just the piece, when there's more information to it, I would take that. That really helped me a lot too.
Yeah, good.
I really liked that.
I enjoy reading them because I don't know what I don't know what you're going to do. And so I enjoy it when I get a lot more than I expected. And hopefully it is like something that allows you to really just like learn something, like learn more than you might otherwise learn. So, and I think if you research something, you will, it'll stay with you. Yeah. Hold on for just a second, peoples. I need to take screenshots. Lineup of participants here. There you go. All right, so we can do attendance. Any other like questions, comments for me? All right.
Oops, sorry, I was gonna say something and then I muted myself, but I don't know if you mentioned this at the beginning of class because I was a little bit late tonight. But I was on the call last night with Erin, and she was amazing, by the way. I thought she was just so well spoken and full of great information. And I wanted to know if we wanted to reach out to her just to say thanks, because I had to jump off the call a little bit early. Are we able to get in touch with her via email, or should we send an email to you to forward on to her?
You could send an email to her directly,
Okay.
and I can share the email that I'm using. It's yeah, I can send it to you, but it is Erin.s@shakorincorporated.com. I believe that is on her website
Okay.
because that's where I would have gotten it from because I didn't know her. I see.
Well, she was great. She was really fun to listen to, I thought. And for the record, I was a little nervous taking this class initially because I thought maybe it was going to be a really like dry kind of conversation for such a long class. And you, I think, did a really great job keeping it interesting. And I actually will say that after having taken this class, I now have a newfound curiosity about the history of furniture. And I am noticing like all those little, architectural details and nuances all over the place now, like we had talked about in the beginning of the semester. Um, so thank you for that.
Right. That makes me feel good.
So you find yourself doing that too, Robin? Everywhere I go now, I'm always looking and pointing out to my family, look, that's Gothic, or look,
Oh
that's
yes,
from the
my husband
Renaissance, and
doesn't
they're
care.
looking at me
Neither
like
do my
I'm
kids.
crazy. We went to the Walnut Room, and I made us go by the old Carson Peary Scott building on purpose, down on straight, just so I could say, hey, look, we learned about this in class, and they're all like, oh, whatever.
Mm-hmm. That's it is. When I started studying history, I would do that to people, and they're like, "Oh my God, there he goes again," because I was excited. I'm like, "Oh my God, you guys do you know this?" Oh yeah. But it's kind of like it's what you want to do, and so there is a lot to know, and it's nice to have a little bit of the have the information and get a start with how do you identify different styles of furniture or just seeing things that you can see evidence of it out in the world. That it's not just like in this class and it stays in this class. It's all over the place. So, and I've got to talk about stuff, and there has to be a lecture because you got to get information from me. But I really hate. I really wouldn't want to bore anybody too much.
You didn't. Me anyway.
That's great. Yeah. So, yeah, and honestly, when I studied history, it was very different. It was the days before the internet, and we went to our history classes. Professor, I guess if it was just like regular, social political history, we read books, we got lectures, notes on the board, and then we talked about it. And if you didn't do all of those things, you missed it. And they usually didn't care. They're like, well, like this, I talked about it in class. It's on the exam. And they're like, what? Can't remember that. And they would just say like, well, you have to work on your memory. And then we would move on, and you stick with it, and you still slowly figure out good ways to get yourself to remember stuff. And art history classes was it's visual, and I always loved the stories behind what was going on, and that was always something that would engage. I would find engaging. So yeah. You're also going to find with furniture design, a lot of the stuff is still being made, and you're going to see it if you do any design work for someone. It's kind of traditional. I had a student tell me she did house staging for real estate, and she said after while she was taking this class, she started to notice stuff that she hadn't noticed before. That was really it was already there, but she just she didn't know what it was. So it is meant to be useful. Yeah, and I try not to be boring. I'm usually not a boring person, but you know, it's also like, so at some point it's just like, well, I'm sorry, this is the information. You can't rewrite history and just say like, oh yeah, nothing happened before the Renaissance. It's like boring, stupid people. So, all right. Let me know if you have questions. I'll make sure that you have your final exam no later than 5 p.m. on Monday. If you like, yeah, any just like questions about any of the work that's already been done that you will do for the final, just ask me, and we'll get just yeah, you'll have your last chance to be tested on information on the final exam, and I'll do the same thing where you will have the option of taking it twice, just in case there's mostly in case there's a problem. Final exam, is you probably won't have the opportunity. You might not have the opportunity to take it time after I grade it. So anyway, so the other side, like I left those other, like the most recent quiz open into next week. I think I just like so before someone asks me, I just extended it because somebody might. Okay, and here he comes to say bye. Elliot.
Is that Dennis?
This is Elliot.
Elliot.
Super cat.
Goodbye, Elliot.
Bye.
All
right. See you.
Bye.
Thank
See you
you.
next semester.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you, Duffy.
Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Semester, if I'm seeing you next
Good
semester.
night.
Thank you.